welcome back to Cosmic Comics. Today I'm going to look at how the Kree were introduced into the Marvel Galaxy by focusing on their first encounter with Earth-616 within the pages of Marvel. The trouble all begins in Fantastic Four, issues 64 through 65, published in 1967. So, yes, there is plenty of backstory and retconning to take place on down the road, but these two issues are the first time that the Kree appeared within the pages of Marvel. Early in the issue, Reed and Sue decide it's time to take a vacation. We're then taken to a seemingly crackpot scientist who believes that our planet used to be ruled by an alien civilization. While in the jungle somewhere, he points to a spire which he says he read about on ancient Incan tablets. All he needs to do is point the broken hand of the lost idol at the spire, and sure enough, the spire starts to glow. But, whoa, hold on, where did you get this hand with that little mini cosmic cube-looking thing in it? What is the lost idol? Which Incan tablets were you reading? So much to unpack here, and answers we never get. As the two approach the spire, a set of stairs rises out of the hillside before them. They take these into a complex. Amazingly, the old man knows that the race he seeks is the Kree. As soon as they get down into the cool stuff, the professor's guide wants to turn back, but the professor realizes the enormity of his find in being surrounded by artifacts and technology that were all made on another planet. As they walk through, the professor points out that this was once a spaceport, a port that would have been old when humans were still a young species. The guide hears something and, oh no! No need to be that trigger happy. He fires several shots at a robot that introduces itself as Intergalactic Sentry 459, whose purpose is to protect the base. The Sentry then freezes both of them in a mass of colloidal atoms. Meanwhile, Ben is picking out a vacation spot for the Fantastic Four, and wouldn't you know it, his dart lands on a small island in the South Pacific. Johnny isn't going to join them on the trip, so the remaining Fantastics prepare for their getaway. Johnny, Crystal, and Triton see them off. Back at the island, Sentry 459 moves to protect the base by setting up an appropriate perimeter. One of the things he does to do so is to position the unfailing vibro screen, which hurls away any unwanted island visitors with a blanket of unseen vibrations. As a neat aside, because Kree see a slightly different color spectrum than humans, the vibro screen can be seen by Kree but is totally invisible to humans. Okay, all the pieces are in place. Time for fantastic alien interactions. The Fantastics close in on their island getaway, but Richards is already picking up something ominous on the instrument panel. And wouldn't you know it, they've run into the vibro screen. Reed goes into hero panic mode and starts ordering everybody else out of the plane. It's Sue who reminds him that she can do things like protective bubbles. Unfortunately, while in the bubble, Reed is going to have to land the ship horizontally, which it wasn't made to do. Back on the island, the Sentry stands shocked, especially since he just installed that vibro screen. He's amazed that a ship has made it through his barrier. He's intent on discovering what kind of beings could beat a piece of Kree weaponry. The Fantastics fly over the top of the Sentry while attempting to land, and the Sentry reaches up and catches the plane mid-flight as it passes by. The Sentry begins by telling them what he is and stating his purpose, reasonable and upfront. I am a Sentry. This area has been designated as a spaceport to be used by the Kree race. You are trespassing, and it's my job to get rid of you for my bosses, the Kree. The Fantastic Four didn't seem to know anything about the island they were visiting ahead of time, and it seems reasonable that, they might be trespassing. One tiny island, out in the middle of nowhere, in the Pacific, and we've got the potential to open relations with an alien race that already has an intact spaceport. Reed and the people of Earth should be super excited about this opportunity. Instead, the Fantastic Four turned this into a conflict zone. Granted, it was the Sentry that didn't give them much time between "you need to leave" and "now I'm going to start shooting blast rays out of my chest." Reed grabs a hold, but the creature is capable of bursting free of Richard, and the Thing takes this chance to wallop the Sentry in his open chest. The Thing is pretty proud of his work, and the Sentry attempts to explain that he's not just a robot, but Ben is more interested in clobbering time than listening. The Sentry is impressed by Ben's punch, commenting that nobody had ever toppled a Sentry before. He then finishes telling Ben what he was saying before. He's not just a Sentry. He's a living Sentry who can never be defeated. If he runs across an enemy more powerful than himself, the Sentry is programmed to increase its strength or deploy different methods of attack. Basically, anytime a Sentry is brought down, it repairs itself, makes itself strong enough to withstand the attack, and then continues to press the attack. In fact, as we'll soon see, the Sentry can even make changes to itself mid-battle. These last two panels of this page are great, as the Sentry points out that he bears the Fantastic Four no malice. He's merely trying to carry out the orders he was programmed to obey. Guard the Kree spaceport and destroy all invaders. It's like you can just see him begging them here. Dude, just go on vacation on the next island over. This one has already been claimed by an ancient alien race predating the time of man. Just, move on. The Richards realize Thing is in trouble. Reed directs Susan to try to call in Johnny as fast as possible. When Susan expresses concern about how Reed will stop the Sentry, he goes all alpha dog on her. "This isn't your husband talking. It's Mr. Fantastic, the leader of the world's greatest team." Reed literally springs into action off of a nearby rock outcropping and looks to enfold the Sentry. Once he wraps all around the Sentry, Reed keeps wrapping tighter and tighter until he's able to make the Sentry fall back into the ocean. This must be a pretty weak Sentry. He said earlier that no Sentry had ever been toppled before, and now Robomouth has gone down twice in one day. Oh, the Sentry bards are going to make fun of this guy for thousands of years. After toppling the Sentry, Reed saves Ben from the water. Susan is capable of getting in touch with Johnny, who is with Crystal and Lockjaw. Susan gets off the transmitter and races towards the water to help Reed. She then uses her power to make Reed and Ben appear invisible during their escape. The Sentry can't see them, but lets Susan know he's aware that she's capable of altering light waves. Susan wants to know why they have to keep fighting. The Sentry's like, "Look, guys, why don't you get it? I don't have a choice in the matter. I can only obey my orders, and my orders are, if you don't belong here, I destroy you." With that in mind, the Sentry slams his fist down hard enough to create a wave large enough to wash over the entire island. The team prepares to be washed away, but is surprised to find the Human Torch joining the fight thanks to Lockjaw's quick delivery. He helps break the wave and wastes no time in joining the fight. Johnny rolls in blazing and is immediately impressed by the size of the rocks the Sentry is picking up to swing at him. The Sentry attacks the Human Torch with beach sand, but the Human Torch notes that he's had enough practice with Sandman that the Sentry's antics won't work. The Torch's next attack penetrates to an underground portion of the Kree spaceport. What's not expected is the resulting explosion. Reed explains that Johnny's flame must have hit the Kree's underground power supply, and that soon the entire island is likely to explode. Their best chance of survival is to locate Lockjaw and transport out. As they run across the debris field, Ben falls into a crevice and tells his friends to keep running. On his way down, Ben grabs a cube of solid atoms containing the professor and guide from earlier. Ben bursts their containment structure apart, and seconds later, Reed is capable of assisting everybody to the planet's surface. They all go from getting rescued and jawing about what's going on straight to, "Move it! Everybody run! Time is running out! Ah, Cons, run! It's the Lagorf!" In the next panel, everybody has made it safely to Lockjaw, and they all get one last glance back towards the island, where they see the Sentry standing amid debris and destruction. the Sentry prepares its final report on the destroyed outpost, but remains resolved to continue protecting his post as ordered. So, we still haven't seen any Kree. We've just seen their spaceport and some of their technology via Sentry 459. In the very next issue, we see there is a price to be paid for the Fantastic Four's meddling in Kree affairs with the introduction of our first Kree character, who, interestingly enough, is portrayed as a pink-skinned Kree throughout his first appearance, but in fact is a blue-skinned Kree. This issue also marks the first appearance of the Surpreme Intelligence. So, as you can imagine, this issue is kind of a big deal on how it sets the stage for things to come. We only get one chance to make a first impression, and that was pretty much ruined by the giant robot battle in the previous issue. The following issue opens with the first appearance of the Surpreme Intelligence, who invades our hero's headspace to let them know that he knows it was they who destroyed his Hidden Earth outpost and Sentry. While holding them in thrall, the Supreme Intelligence probes their brains and releases them until his sentence is announced by Ronan the Accuser. It takes a couple of pages, but eventually all of the Fantastic Four come to the conclusion that they suffered the same nightmare. Reed's mind is blown by this, and he gets this really intense look when he realizes that somebody can hit them with a mind probe from anywhere in space. Sue has had enough and wants out. All she wants to do is be the housewife of scientist Reed Richards. Then Reed goes and pulls a little domestic violence. He physically restrains Sue from leaving, even after she tells him to let go. He pulls her in and goes full creep on her when he starts lying to her by telling her that a tear in her eye is worse than facing down 1,000,000 superpowered foes. And once he gets her close, still got her all wrapped up, mind you, he tells her all about how he's gonna buy her a new wardrobe and take her out on the town. And he wraps up this odd display of chauvinism by stating that wives should be kissed and not heard. I'm not saying that we don't have farther to go, but I can say this much. You've changed, America. I feel like this is the moment I should cue in the Star Wars Empire music. Heading towards the Earth is Ronan the Accuser, who sees Earth as a primeval planet, which really speaks about how the Kree as a whole see humans. Basically, Ronan is headed this way to make an example out of 4 Earthlings by putting them in their place and thus ensuring Kree dominance in this portion of space. As Ronan prepares to teleport down to Earth, we see a couple things. First, and most obvious, is the fact that Ronan thinks that having to visit Earth and hand down a sentence on a backwash planet within one of their most remote shipping lanes is beneath Kree importance. In fact, the Sentry which had been stationed here had been forgotten about completely until his defeat registered during a regular scan. Secondly, and more subtly, we see the beginnings of treason. Ronan wishes he had the right to question a command of the Supreme Intelligence because he would have questioned the necessity of his current mission. As Ronan arrives on Earth, he allows us to learn more about the Kree by giving us insight as to how they view us. The first thing he does is create an aura of negativism about himself, which makes people unaware of his presence and allows him to study his subjects at a close range. After judging our sociological and scientific advances, Ronan concludes that we are at an intermediate stage of development and are sorely beset by greed, hatred, fear, and other virtues of the spirit. Now, mind you, this is the first Kree that we've actually seen, so when this is written in this way this early, it implies that these negative qualities don't exist within the Kree, and maybe possibly at least especially not within Ronan. But as we will eventually see, these, quote, viruses of the spirit plague the Kree as well. Ronan is disgusted by the weak species of creatures he's surrounded by. Ronan creates a cone of impenetrability about himself and prepares to mete out the sentence of the Kree. The Fantastic Four, while out taking care of their daily lives, suddenly vanish. Each of them is transported into Ronan's cone of invulnerability. Here, Ronan accuses them of their crime of destroying a Kree outpost and the destruction of the Sentry. Each of the Fantastic Four speaks up, but Johnny is the only one who puts forward any kind of viable defense in his claim that they were all acting in self-defense. Ronan gets annoyed and insists that they need to be quiet. The Thing starts to do his thing and threatens the situation with physical violence. In order to force Ben to submit, Ronan uses his universal weapon upon the Thing. He informs Ben that the more he struggles, the more pressure that will be exerted on him. Johnny decides it's his turn to step up to the plate. On his second pass, the Accuser uses his universal weapon to draw Johnny's flame away from him. Reed saves Johnny with one arm and attempts to disarm Ronan of his weapon with the other. Reed is forced back after being hit by a stun blast emitted from the universal weapon. I love this panel. The Accuser stops to marvel at the fact that, to these simpletons, his club probably seems like a magic wand, and they have probably never seen such incredibly simple tech as the universal weapon, which allows him to create and destroy all physical matter as he wills it. To show off the full extent of his abilities, Ronan changes the Fantastic Four out of their street clothes and into their uniforms. You can tell how the Kree feel about humans when he reminds them that a Kree official must ever be treated with the utmost respect that befits a superior being. Since the Fantastic Four refuse to acknowledge proper procedure, Ronan has no choice but to move forward with sentencing. While Ben Grimm slowly creeps across the ground towards Ronan, the other three continue to distract Ronan long enough for Ben to come up behind him and pin his arms. Ronan is extremely upset about not being allowed to finish his sentencing. Ben topples the Accuser with the help of his teammates. As they struggle, the Human Torch is extinguished once more, and Ben and Reed attempt to remove Ronan from his weapon. As he gets a shot off on Reed, Ronan starts to regain some of his confidence. He prepares to remove the Thing from his back when Reed calls Ben to perform Stratagem 32. In that moment, Ben follows Reed's advice and ends up forcing Ronan to land upon his own discharging weapon. The Accuser's judgment ended up being dealt out upon himself, and Ronan disappears in the resulting explosion. Afterwards, Ben wonders why everything ended so fast, and Reed lets him know that it's not over. Due to the failure of his mission, all traces of Ronan were removed, but that humans have now run across an intelligent and aggressive alien race. Thanks for watching Cosmic Comics. Feel free to hit any of the buttons below. I'm out.